Welcome, fellow Phoenixes, to the Spiritual Phoenix Podcast, where we make a daily offering to the divine by putting our past on the pyre, searching the smoke for spirituality, turning the ashes into art, adapting isolation into connection, and manifesting mental wellness. I'm a spiritual phoenix named Ross Cessna, and I wish to ignite the authentic expression of your soul into any avenue that elevates consciousness. I don't want to tell you what to think, but get you to think, create your own understanding, and express yourself in a way that is uplifting. We are the artists of our lives, and today is a blank canvas. Let's collectively create a better tomorrow. And let's take a moment now and focus on what we're grateful for. Today, I'm grateful for the sacred feminine and the fractals of her that manifest into every feminine element or living creature on this planet. And with that, I'm going to get into Wordplay Wednesday. The first word we're going to talk about is words. And words are double-sided swords that many fail to see the invisible blade pointed back at them. When we speak words of love, we cut the hate in our hearts. When we speak words of hate, we cut the love in our hearts. And if you look at it, if you add an S to the word words, you get swords. And words can be cutting. And as I expressed there, they can be used to cut the love in your heart or cut the hate in your heart. And the invisible blade would be the S missing at the end of it. Kind of a stretch there, but I'm going to roll with it. The next one is love, and love spelled backwards is evil, but this kind of evil can be evolved back into love with the proper ending or reflection. And in case you missed it, when you spell love backwards, it's E-V-O-L. And then when I say evolved, if you add V-E, it becomes, the evil there becomes evolve. And in regards to the reflection, if you have a mirror and you spell it E-V-O-L, the evil there, it then becomes love. It's just something to think about, because many times I was trying to love people. The person that I needed to love was myself, and then I could attract the correct kind of love rather than the way that I was acting in my concept of love. And I have several quotes for this episode. All my own perception of beauty, both in majesty and simplicity, is founded upon Our Lady. That was said by J.R.R. Tolkien. I found that yesterday on his birthday when I was looking at quotes, and I wanted to use it today. The rest are by women because they have a better perspective on the sacred feminine. Liberty is a great celestial goddess, strong, beneficent, and austere, and she can never descend upon a nation by the shouting of crowds, nor by arguments of unbridled passion, nor by the hatred of class against class. And that was said by Annie Besant. The goddess is not just the female version of God, she represents a different concept, and that was said by Merlin Stone. A religion without a goddess is halfway to atheism. That was said by Dion Fortune. Women's stories are powerful, inspiring, and terrifying as the goddess herself. And in fact, these are the stories of the goddess. As women, we know her because we are her. Each woman, no matter how powerless she might feel, is a cell within her vast form, an embodiment of her essence, and each woman's story is a chapter in the biography of the sacred feminine. And that was said by Jalaha Bonam. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's a very beautiful quote, though. And this topic is what I intended to talk about yesterday, but as I am at the whim of my muse, the mysteries, I was told to switch gears to save it. Obviously, as a male, I can't touch on every aspect of the sacred feminine. I'm not able to do so. I can express my experience and knowledge from one who is privy to the temple, but not the inner temple of lived experience. This subject arose from a recent conversation with a man about the misery he was imposing upon himself, and him saying how he had to act a certain way because of the frailty of a woman in his life. Rather than be a man and cut ties with someone who wasn't compatible with him, he did what many a fool do and try to make her as he wanted, which isn't love at all. it is the exact opposite, actually, and that's the evil that I talk about when love's spelled backwards. The irony is that he was trying to break her to his will, not accepting her, trying to dominate her, which is the ultimate frailty. Is it not? Women are not frail, however, the male ego is. I say this from my own personal experience of similar situations, not in condemnation, but admitting a truth of lived experience. The man I mentioned wasn't me, but I have done and thought all those thoughts. I have a different understanding today. How can a being that handles the labor of forming and carrying a baby, enduring all the physical discomfort of childbirth, and then ultimately the process of having another human being come from their body be frail? Women are of a different level of strength than most men. Men may have the ability to gain muscle mass quicker due to testosterone, but physical strength doesn't prevent one from frailty. Physical strength is actually the manifestation of the weakest form of strength. Women have endured more hardships than men historically. They have had to fight what men took from them. Many of them didn't resort to the primitive use of physical strength to oppose the opposition imposed by the male dominator culture. Women used their voices, their unity, their connection, their creativity, their minds to a common cause, which shows how damn strong they are. Some may argue, but women are more emotional. First off, that is an opinion. Secondly, expressing emotion isn't a sign of weakness. Being controlled by negative ones can be. Not showing any or stagnating in negative ones, such as anger, insensitivity, that is weakness. Insensitivity is a common misconception of strength, when again, it is the ultimate sensitivity and a sign of living death as well as frailty. Women are a fractal of the divine feminine, which in my opinion is a fractal of the androgynous source energy. Many ills of the world, in my opinion, are quite literally due to the suppression or complete disregard for the sacred feminine. The earth is the womb of humanity, and men have sought to dominate and prove mastery over it for ages. Today we see this manifest as people continue to rape the sacred feminine for profit, and our enduring birth mother may offer a solution to her quote-unquote man problem in a way that affects all of us. She can live without us. We can't live without her, which is a natural transition into my experience with the sacred feminine. I was ill growing up, and as such was a focal point in my family. I was fortunate to grow up with a mother many could only dream of. She is loving, kind, and of enduring emotional strength. She, like many of us, hasn't had the easiest of lives. Her cure for her ails was, and still is, always kindness, even amidst a tempest of chaos. When my parents divorced, I took up a grudge with both my mother and my father. Through a tumultuous custody battle, I switched hands many times like the Olympic torch. My father remarried, and this shifted his attention onto his new wife, who I initially found amazing. Later, I loathed her. Today, I am learning to love and appreciate that I was fortunate enough to get two mothers. Although my stepmother could never replace my original mother, she too is an amazing woman on many levels. As I heal the scars of my past, I get to become grateful for who she was and is. I was fortunate to be surrounded by so many strong, loving, caring women in those days as well. My aunts, grandmothers, and other relatives, stepsisters, etc. in my youth, although I was too fragile to fully appreciate it then. I unconsciously started my war against the divine feminine after my parents got divorced. It would be in rude comments, it would be in stealing from my mother to buy material things. Later the stealing would be drugs, be for drugs or alcohol. It would be anger. It was poison. Eventually the battle against the sacred feminine force would grow. This profane action towards my mother and stepmother eventually seeped into romantic relationships. As a youth, I was always subconsciously enamored with the healing properties of women. I can remember in preschool getting in trouble for making out with a young girl in class. In elementary school, I would develop painful, soul-grinding crushes. I can recall trying to woo my first real crush in the 2nd or 3rd grade by buying her a bag of chips. This gift-giving with a hidden intent was something that carried on until recently. I was never really successful at getting the attention of women from an early age, and normally after I did, I would lose interest and detach from them because I was too frightened to get close. This early instilled belief and response carried on most of my life. I deified women and elevated them above me. This would become a problem. As is the case in most foolish minds, I would deify that which wasn't for me and then demonize myself for not being enough, being broken, and being wrong. And when I say deify above me, I don't mean that women are below me. I mean that they're on equal footing. I can view women as a goddess, but I have to view myself as a fractal of a god. They can be my queen, and I can be their king. They can be the lioness, and I can be the lion. And not a lion that goes around promiscuously hooking up with other lionesses. I used to think I was never really like other males. It used to cause me such immense pain, such isolation, such fear, such anxiety. My first relationship was toxic. I had a good young woman, Lisa, who, like myself, had some things to work through. The statement "fools rush in" applies to much of my romantic endeavors. I pursued our relationship even when she was walking away from it countless times, a reoccurring thread in my romantic self-destruction. The more I chased it, the further actual love moved from me, and the less I loved myself. When she and I would end up on the outs, I would seek romantic attention elsewhere. I was good at being a charmer. I could say things other young men couldn't. I was a great seducer at one time. The inevitable conclusion of this seduction would end with me casting aside the women that had healed the wounds I inflicted upon myself from my romance with Lisa. Then Lisa would rake me over the coals for having found other romance, even though we hadn't been together. Thinking of it now, it could be that all she wanted was security and knowing that she meant enough to me to wait and work things out, rather than finding the next solution. This is a time when my addiction to drugs and alcohol became deeply rooted in my life. Many of the ills in my life were in regards to romance. And Lisa, the lesson I learned later in life from our time was what you saw then. I put substances before you, and I never loved myself. I put too much on you and not enough on me. Now women had just become sex objects. That romantic, caring young man was now an incubus. I would illuminate the world of women only to gain their sexual gifts, then cast them back into the abyss. After inflicting the pain and abandon I continually created in my mind on many women, Lisa and I eventually ended our relationship for good. I started culinary school and found at this time they were now objects to pine after. At the end of culinary school, I met Angela. She was a panacea because she was creative, she was beautiful, she could sing. Most of all, she thought I was amazing and pursued me. However, although Lisa and I were done, I would switch between their attention. Angela and I quickly became close, and I had to leave as quick as I met her because I had to do my culinary externship, and wanting to escape where I grew up, I chose Las Vegas, Nevada as the place. Although I had feelings for Angela, she was 2,000 some miles away now, and I had to fulfill my quote-unquote manly impulses. I found new objects to pine over. I say objects intentionally because at this time women were no longer really people in how I treated them. They were sex dolls that required a game. Lisa was going to visit me at one point, and I was so broken that I treated it as unimportant, and she never came out to visit me. Angela visited me several times, and we eventually started dating, even though she was thousands of miles away, and at one point she moved out to live with me. I was self-absorbed, and our relationship fell apart quickly. She couldn't trust me, and in turn, I couldn't trust her because of my history of infidelity, not her actions. The end of this relationship caused the stage of my great wandering. In a matter of 6 months, I lived in Las Vegas, Washington State, homeless on the beaches of Northern California, Las Vegas, Ohio, Vegas, and then ended up in Ohio. And Angela, you taught me how to love my creativity, how to be more present with the person who I have affection for, how to be a better man. Angela, you also taught me that I needed to love myself. I just didn't realize it yet. Eventually, I moved to California. did more of the same in regards to using women, awakening love in them, and running away. By this time, I was so scarred by my own actions, I didn't know up from down. After a brief departure from Cali, I went to the Keys, more pining, and eventually back to California, where I met Candy. Candy and I's relationship was founded on alcoholism, boundary breaking, and the ins and outs of Lisa and I's relationship, of the getting back together and all of that. Although I never cheated on Candy or had romantic relations outside of the relationship, even on the outs. It was the shortest of my serious romantic relationships, but inflicted the most harm. By this time I had broken myself so many times, all she got was fractured pieces, gifts with hidden agendas, obsessive attention, and golem-like possession, and toxic behavior when I didn't get my way. My thoughts and poor emotional regulation ended me up in the psych ward for the first time. I told her she made me crazy. Either a little bit before or after the psych ward, wrote a song called Goddess that really drove home the concept of her being the cause of my pain. And Candy, you taught me that I could never love you until I loved me. Sometimes, although we may love someone, we can't be in love with them. You and I separating was never about me not being enough. It was about me not thinking I was enough, not caring for myself, not believing in myself, and putting too much on you. You were the lesson that made me learn from Lisa, as well as she was the first to really make this lesson present. And I want to say that when I wrote a song about her being the cause of my pain, I recognized that it was me. I mistyped that, apparently. When our relationship ended, I evaluated who I had become. I started out as a lover, broken as I was in a relationship with Lisa. Eventually, I became who I perceived Lisa to be. Angela got to date me as such. She was a healer, but I was a tyrant, and eventually she became a mirror for my pain. After Angela, I became who I perceived Angela to be, and also attempted to apply the same level of attention I learned from the destruction of that relationship to Candy. And after Candy in the psych ward, I had no concept of anything. That was really a dark time in my life where I thought I would never be able to find women to love me or appreciate me or respect me, because I had demoralized myself to such an extent. The start of my second psychosis was a vibrating pulse in my third eye, a scanning of my conscious, and a call to action to save Candy. Even though it had been a year since we had talked and she was some 3,000 some miles away, the obsession with her was reignited and continued. I could do a whole episode on this and may well just do so at some time. The next serious infatuation would be with Courtney. I was on and off. She healed the broken parts of me by accepting me after my episode with mental illness. She was my first new friend after the occurrences that had lasted with the better part of 3 years. That infatuation was there, but I tried to play the nice guy. I was genuine at first. Eventually, it became kindness with intent of achieving an expectation, that being of sexual gratification. This didn't end well and led me to where I am today. Courtney, you actually taught me the lesson of love, and my current state exists because of my love for you and not wanting to act how I had been acting anymore. You made me face the demon inside me and see it was just a scared little boy with a mask. Although we have never been physically intimate, you have given me the type of intimacy and connection I always needed. Even though we haven't talked in over a month, you are and always will be a friend and an important woman in my life. What I have learned in all of these experiences has been invaluable in healing myself. In Native American culture, there is a belief that there are 4 types of beings: women, men, women with both souls, and men with both souls. My understanding is that the 2 souls don't imply sexuality, but rather the life they live. Those beings that possess both are said to be the strongest. I interpret my experiences as such. I was always more effeminate than most other males around me, which I eventually suppressed. In turn, my concept of masculinity became dominant, which was toxic and eventually suppressed. So I eventually became soulless, which is when the epitome of my soul sickness arose. Strangely enough, this soul sickness was the cure for itself. It made me come into contact with the sacred feminine within me. During my psychosis, I even had the thought of marrying the sacred feminine. I went as far as to think one of my rings was the quote-unquote wedding ring. Strangely enough, it is my ring with the phoenix and the dragon on it. I mentioned the ring in another episode and just found a deeper level I had not noticed or remembered until now. This sacred feminine allowed me to give birth to a new sacred masculine. One of my beliefs is that the virgin birth mentioned in the Bible is an allegory for the divine feminine giving birth to a new man who starts in an infant state. The Immaculate Conception is the birth of the quote-unquote Son of God, who only comes from the divine love of the sacred masculine loving the sacred feminine. And I don't mean this specifically in male and female relationships, but that's my only experience with it. I think that homosexual relationships or bisexual relationships or any kinds of intimacy like that can have the same experience. The aspects of the sacred feminine that I have gained and am learning are tenderness, wisdom, patience, nurturing, flexibility, and fertility. So I'll wrap this whole personal story up with this. Because of the frailty of the male ego, I eventually suppressed one of my greatest gifts, a direct link with the sacred feminine. This left the toxic sacred masculine I had cultivated run rampant, eventually causing my body to reject it as well. In this period of soullessness, the sacred feminine came back to me to heal me. This is when I reconnected with tenderness, wisdom, patience, which I'm still learning this one now, nurturing, flexibility, still learning this one too, and fertility. And by fertility, I mean in the sense that I was able to birth a quote-unquote new man, create a new future, and cultivate my creative gifts. The sacred feminine is the nurturing, intuitive, creative wisdom that is who made me who I am today. I have a direct connection with it. It is the larger part of my soul, but allows the masculine to be equal in power. It is the part that loves the beast inside of me enough to give birth to him again, but under a closer watch, and create a man with a reverence for both. I'd like to share a few synchronicities of the sacred feminine that occurred when I started writing this episode last night. The first would be, as I began writing this, Nixie Marie, Nixie the Pixie, the creator of the Goddess Collective, contacted me in a response to something I sent her, and it was a cool synchronicity, so thank you for that, Nixie. And also, after I began writing this and I was getting ready for bed, Kristen Pritchard, another friend from the Positive Head group on Facebook, sent me a song that she felt inclined to send. It was called Forgiveness and is a cover by Susan Tedeschi. I interpret both as a sacred feminine telling me I am on the right path, and the latter being the sacred feminine saying that she forgives me for everything and that I need to forgive myself. Expressing this story has been so cathartic and illuminating. I may not have touched on as much of the principles of the sacred feminine as I wished to as I closed this writing. However, I did my best and removed some of the gunk that was blocking my progress. I wish to do more episodes on the sacred feminine in the future, and that will require more research. While it would be beneficial to do more research, I may save discussion of such topics for female guests so I can learn from a better conduit of feminine energy. Even though I have both souls in my composition, at the end of the day, I am a man and can only perceive the perspective of the sacred feminine through this lens. A woman's viewpoint is essential in furthering my understanding. I'll close with this. Men, if you want to be a real man, you don't do so by power, physical strength, dominance, aggression, anger, hate, violence, volatile comments, etc. You do so by entering into a sacred union, by either incorporating or embracing and balancing the qualities of the sacred feminine in your life. I will discuss sacred masculinity in my experience tomorrow. It goes from toxicity to appreciation. Men, if you want good women in your life, you must be a good man. You must see the good women in your life now. You must not vilify the women who you have hurt yourself over. You must love them, not hold the position of toxic hate towards them. You are the source of your pain. You project it on to another. When you speak ill of women, you are speaking ill of divinity. When you act ill towards women, you are inflicting ill on divinity, and you will receive negative consequences for it. Maybe not in this life, but you will pay for your deeds. If you want love, you have to give love, which is unconditional acceptance. If you want to transition from being a boy to a man, embrace your sacred feminine by not dominating and suppressing it. You can't force love. You can't fight for love. You attract love by being love. I have learned this from my personal experience and pain. Ladies, you are the sacred feminine incarnate, each a fractal of divinity, divine in your own light by birth. From my perspective, you are the sex that in modern culture is better suited to incorporate or embrace and balance the divinity of the other. This divinity is reflected in the beauty of all women. Your beauty is manifested in so many other ways beyond the physical. It is in your actions, your words, your nature, your nurture. You are part of the essence of all life, no greater or less than the healthy, balanced male energy. Your right is to love yourself as you are without comparison to another. The only person you should want to compare yourself to is the former female phoenix whose ashes you arose from. Ladies, remember, you are not defined by the men in your life or other women unless you let yourself be. Remember, when men treat you unkind, harsh, rude, objectify you, minimize you, attempt to dominate you, that is a sign of their weakness, not yours. Remember, your relationship with yourself sets the tone for all other relationships. Remember, you are beautiful as is, but your true beauty will shine when you love yourself, when you accept yourself, when you caringly push yourself, when you embrace creativity, when you embrace yourself, and when you let that spark of the inherent sacred divine begin to flourish. I will now express gratitude for the women who have made me who I am today. My first thanks is towards and for my mother. You loved me when I didn't love myself, forgave me when I was unforgivable, gave me everything when I wanted to take everything, gave me time to heal when I was wounded, gave me food, gave me shelter, taught me how to love, and ultimately brought me into this world. My next is my grandmother, on both sides and an adopted one. You fulfilled your grandmotherly roles in perfection. My grandma Cessna gave me my love of animals and healing. My grandma Sariki gave me my love of travel, of reading, of gems and minerals, and the metaphysical. My adopted grandma Stoll, you taught me history, manners, which I learned to actually practice later, philosophy, and added such quality to my life. You are all great gifts. Grandma Sariki, you are the one I still get to enjoy in person. The others, I know you are with me in spirit. I'd like to express gratitude to my aunts on all sides. Aunt Joan, who left me when I was 5 or 6. Aunt June, Aunt Patty, Aunt Sue, Aunt Cindy, and Aunt Pam. You were all women that gave me great gifts. Thank you for being in my life. My stepmother Mia, you acted not as a replacement for my actual mother. That was never your intent, but as a second mother. You did an excellent job, even if I was too foolish to see it then. I see it now. My stepsisters Stephanie, Melanie, and Betsy. You were all such important parts of my life, and I lost touch with that, and I'm now able to appreciate it. To my former girlfriends, Jessica, Lisa, Angela, Candy, you taught me so much about myself, often after the fact. I am proud I am a product of your love and lessons learned later. To my countless female friends, thank you for your friendship and camaraderie. You have helped define me. To all the other women I have encountered and have yet to meet, Thank you for being you as you are an incarnate fractal of divinity. Whether you know it or accept it, that is how I see you. I'd like to close with an apology to all the women I cannot apologize to. I know that the sacred feminine has forgiven me, but I still want to apologize for the hurt, anger, pain, and anything else my actions manifested in your mind. You were not defective. I was. I learned my lessons from the pain I inflicted because they hurt me in the end. And I want to thank the sacred divine for allowing her light, her nurture, her intuition, and all her gifts into my life as they have healed me to where I can learn to embrace the other within myself, but not allow it to become the toxic brute it once was. And with that, I'm going to put this episode on the pyre. If you have a topic you wish to hear me discuss, or if you would like to be a guest on the show, please contact me via Facebook Messenger. Ideal guests will have had a major life obstacle they are overcoming or have overcome, and will have an inspirational, life-changing philosophy, spiritual awakening, or the insight of lived experience to share. I do free tarot readings occasionally, and I'm building up a database so you can select a reading at random choice or read the most recent reading. A link will be in the description below. Social media description, or links will be in the description. Please leave a review on iTunes if you like the podcast, as it'll help me reach new listeners. And please take the time to respond to the PodTrack listener survey, as it helps me understand my audience. I love, respect, and appreciate all of you. Make it a magical day. Make it a magical now. And with that, love and light. Namaste.